On Christmas Eve, I thought I'd go home with nothing but a hangover. Instead, I came back as someone I no longer recognized. The worst part wasn't collapsing in the middle of the party. It wasn't the pain. It wasn't the blood. It was the moment they placed a baby on my chest. And I didn't feel love. I felt emptiness, guilt, and the unbearable certainty that the woman who walked into that party was gone. If you think motherhood always begins with sweetness, stay with me. Mine began with shock. The music stayed too loud. Laughter, glasses clinking. I pretended everything was fine. The pain stabbed hard, as if testing its path. Then it let go. I stood still, waiting. It didn't come back. Not yet. Someone pulled me into a photo. I smiled stiffly, light in my face. Flash. Real or imagined? My heart started racing without warning. My hands grew damp. A strange weight settled inside me. Something was going to happen. I knew it, without knowing how. It returned differently, deeper, more centered. My body folded on instinct. My hand went straight to my abdomen. Instinct screamed. I ignored it. It passed too quickly to ask for help, too slowly to forget. I breathed wrong. Air wouldn't fill my lungs. I looked around, trying to anchor myself. Red dresses, blinking lights, sweet perfume in the air. Everything looked too normal. Maybe it was cramps. Maybe stress. Maybe something I had eaten. My mind searched for simple answers. They felt safer. The third wave came with heat. A strange, internal heat. Cold sweat ran down my neck. My heart raced even faster. Something wasn't right. Still, I didn't leave. I didn't draw attention. I didn't want to admit something was slipping out of my control. I always handled things. I was always strong. I walked toward the bathroom with measured steps. I needed silence. Space. A few minutes away from everything. I locked the door, rested my hands on the cold sink. My reflection in the mirror felt distant, my eyes too wide. I waited for the pain to return. It didn't come right away. That brought false relief. Maybe it was over. Maybe it was just a scare. But the fear already had a shape, and it grew quietly. Because deep down, I knew, what if the next pain didn't leave? The pain passed, but I didn't relax. My body stayed tense like a stretched rope, about to snap. I forced a smile that never reached my eyes. Red lights flashed on the ceiling. Wine glasses clinked in careless toasts. My heart beat out of rhythm with the Christmas music. Something kept vibrating inside me. Low, persistent, like a warning refusing to leave. My body knew a secret. My mind refused to listen. With cold, almost cruel clarity, I understood. It wasn't over. I thought of exits in split seconds. Bathroom, lock the door, splash water on my face, buy time, porch, cold air in my lungs, escape the warm lights and loud laughs, car in the parking lot, keys in my coat pocket, drive home pretending normalcy, hospital as last resort. The word shamed me. Fear of overreacting paralyzed me. Ideas crashed into each other, too fast to form a plan. My brain screamed, "Get out now," but my legs stuck to the sticky floor. Sweet drink scent mixed with perfume choked me. Every breath became effort. I looked around without asking for help. Familiar faces passed without seeing me. Someone danced near the twinkling tree. Others laughed by the snack table. Red dresses swirled. Selfies snapped like nothing could go wrong that night. No one noticed my pallor or the cold sweat under my makeup. I thanked silence, still kept my facade intact. The young girl who takes everything. Ignores hangovers, excesses, consequences. I started walking through the crowded room. Slowly, measuring each step. Didn't want to trigger another wave. Didn't want to double over in the middle of the party. A scandal would be tomorrow's gossip, and I wasn't ready for that. My body went rigid, muscles in constant alert. Any wrong move could betray me, like carrying something unstable inside, something that could explode without warning. and I felt it every second. The floor seemed to tilt. Walls closed in. Noise turned to distant hum. I reached the bathroom at the end of the hall, pushed the door with my trembling shoulder. The lock click sounded too loud. Hands on the cold porcelain sink. Chilled porcelain anchored me for a moment. I breathed, counting. 1, 2, 3. Trying to make my body obey. The mirror showed a face I barely recognized. Pale skin under Christmas blush. Glazed eyes. Lips parted, begging for air. I waited for something obvious. A simple answer. Something to explain it all without demanding more. Nothing happened. And I clung to that silence. It wasn't serious. Couldn't be. I'd leave there. Sleep. Solve it tomorrow. Hot tea. Daylight. Search symptoms. Make rational calls. Everything logical on paper. But deep down, something stirred again. Deeper. Firmer. And for the first time, I felt it. I wasn't in control anymore. The bathroom grew too quiet once I pulled myself together enough not to fall. It wasn't a comforting silence. It was heavy, filled with things left unsaid. Christmas music leaked through the door, but the party felt far away, almost irrelevant. I washed my face with cold water more times than necessary. The temperature helped me pretend I was in control. I studied my reflection while avoiding my own eyes. There was something there I didn't want to recognize. A version of me that felt less confident, less certain of everything. As I dried my hands on the rough paper towel, an old thought returned without asking permission. You should have taken better care of yourself. It didn't sound like an accusation. It sounded like a late realization. Simple. Impossible to argue with. I began replaying the last few months in my head. The small choices that never seemed important. The nights when I ignored exhaustion. The excesses I called freedom. Always believing my body was strong enough not to demand anything in return. I remembered how many generic warnings I'd heard growing up. Take care of yourself. Nothing in excess is good for you. Your body isn't invincible. Phrases thrown into the air without urgency. Phrases I never really took seriously. Now they came back with a strange weight. Not as warnings, but as overdue charges. As if they'd been waiting for this moment to finally make sense. A slight tremor ran up my arms. Too fast to ignore. My hand drifted back to my abdomen. The gesture was automatic. There was no pain at that moment. But something felt different. A sense of responsibility I had never felt before. As if something inside me depended on me in a new way. I pushed the thought away too quickly. It was an exaggeration. My body was reacting to stress. That was all. I'd always been like this. I felt everything more intensely. Still, the idea wouldn't let go. What if I'd ignored signs for too long? What if this discomfort wasn't just mine? What if my choices had gone beyond me without my knowing? Shame crept in before I could even name it. Shame for living as if nothing had consequences. Shame for treating my body as something separate from my life. And, above all, shame for never thinking of tomorrow as something real. The guilt didn't arrive as panic. It arrived as weight. Heavy. Silent. Settling in slowly. I took a deep breath, trying to push the thoughts away. It was too early for conclusions. I wasn't sure of anything. There were no proofs. No facts. But guilt doesn't need facts to exist. It feeds on possibility. When I felt my body tighten again, faint and almost imperceptible, something became clear. I could pretend I was in control. I could walk out smiling. I could continue the night, but something had already changed, and I knew that I knew. I left the bathroom with shaky legs and a practiced smile on my face. Lisa found me in the hallway and hugged me too tightly. "You're way too pale. Drink some water." I accepted the cold glass without arguing. I had to fake normalcy at any cost. The party had reached its peak. Christmas music blasted at full volume. Lights spun like stars out of orbit. Everyone moved freely, unaware of the abyss I carried inside. I sat on a couch in the corner, crossed my legs to hide the faint stain on my skirt. I controlled my breathing. 1, 2, 3, survive until midnight. That became my only plan, but my body was plotting against me. A quiet, insistent twinge appeared. I ignored it, barely wetting my lips with wine. Merry Christmas. Glasses clinked around me. I smiled at coworkers. It's going to be an amazing year. The lie came out perfectly. Inside, the pressure kept building, like a balloon filling without stopping. I checked the time. 11:45, 15 minutes and I'm gone. My hands trembled around the glass. Jake showed up smiling, hair messy from dancing. Where did you disappear to all night? He touched my shoulder. The warmth of his hand burned my skin. I pulled back instinctively. Endless bathroom trip. You know how it is? He laughed and sat too close. The smell of cologne and sweat filled my space. He talked about work, plans, New Year's. I nodded, smiled, operated on autopilot. My mind screamed to run. My body pretended calm. You're acting strange tonight. My heart skipped a beat, just tired. Long party. The lie worked. Brief relief, too brief. The next wave hit without warning, deeper, more centered. I gripped the armrests. My nails dug into the fabric. The world narrowed to pain. Cold sweat ran down my back. My vision darkened at the edges. I breathed through my mouth. Controlled. Jake stopped talking. Are you really okay? I nodded weakly. The pressure climbed like an endless staircase. Something was forcing its way inside me. I held my abdomen, masking it as a casual gesture. He noticed. Want water? Some air? I shook my head. I stood slowly. I'm going to get some air outside. I refused company. The cold yard air cut my face, relief for seconds. Then the contraction hit hard. I folded over, bracing against the wall. No one could see me there. Liquid ran down my inner thigh. I looked down in terror. The stain was bigger now, dark red. This wasn't stress. This wasn't exaggeration. Something was bleeding inside me. Too serious to ignore. I went back inside, determined to leave. Lisa spotted me from across the room. Leaving already? I nodded. I'm exhausted. Quick hug. Coat. Door. The car felt impossibly far. Every step hurt. The contractions came with their own rhythm. I drove slowly under blinking garlands. Midnight. Fireworks. Official Christmas. My body responded with each contraction. I climbed the stairs carefully. The key shook in the lock. The door closed behind me. Alone, I collapsed on the couch, phone in my hand, emergency or wait it out. The pain hit like a tsunami, and I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. The apartment felt unfamiliar. Not because of the space, but because it no longer seemed to recognize me. The closed door muffled the outside world. Even so, I could feel Christmas pulsing beyond the walls. Distant fireworks. Laughter that wasn't mine. I lay down on the couch, unable to find a position that didn't hurt. Every angle felt wrong. My body refused to rest. It stayed alert, on constant watch, as if waiting for something I couldn't name. Between one wave of pain and the next, time lost its shape. Minutes stretched too long, then shrank too fast. Nothing made sense anymore. In that distorted pause, a strange feeling appeared, and it didn't let go. I felt longing, not for someone, but for a version of my life that might never exist again. The feeling landed heavy, like grief in advance, a loss without an object. I thought about how I'd always lived believing I had choices. That time would follow my plans, that big decisions could wait. I allowed myself to make mistakes because I believed there would always be room to fix them. Now that room felt smaller, too small. A longer contraction made me close my eyes. I waited for it to pass. When it did, there was no relief, only silence. An inner silence that made space for thoughts I'd never allowed before. What if I had crossed a line without realizing it? I imagined simple things I had always taken for granted. Leaving the house without thinking, the freedom of not having to explain myself, the comfort of believing my body would always be on my side. These images came and went quickly, but they left a mark. I picked up my phone just to feel its weight in my hand. I didn't call anyone. I didn't know what I would say. Any word would demand a clarity I didn't have. Notifications kept piling up. I chose not to open them. The longing grew when I realized it wasn't coming from the past. It was coming from the future, from possibilities that were beginning to close, from paths that might never be taken. Even without knowing exactly why, my body seemed to know. Another wave came, stronger. I breathed through it until it passed. When it was over, I felt the urge to cry. Not because of the physical pain, but because it felt like something was being decided without me. Inside me. There, alone in the dark, I understood one thing. No matter what was happening to me, I was no longer the same person who had walked into that party. Even if everything later had a simple explanation, even if nothing was as serious as it seemed, something had been left behind and I already missed it. The pain wouldn't give me a break, but it was no longer just that. Something else was building underneath. A different kind of pressure, not physical, a dull, constant irritation, as if my own body were challenging me. I got up from the couch carefully, steadying myself against the wall. Every step required attention, not out of fear, out of impatience. I was tired of obeying confusing signals, tired of not understanding what was happening to me. I walked around the apartment trying to organize thoughts that refused to settle. A glass of water, the window open, Christmas garlands blinking outside. The light turned on, nothing helped. The discomfort stayed there, watching me. I felt angry at being deceived, not by anyone else, by my own body, for hiding information from me, for continuing to function while something was clearly wrong, as if I didn't have the right to know. I remembered every time I had trusted it without question. When I ignored signs because routine demanded more. When I prioritized work, parties, schedules, always believing that if something were wrong, it would be obvious. My body had always been quiet. Now it felt complicit. The anger grew when I thought about the effort I made to keep everything standing. Practiced smiles. Ready-made answers. Polite excuses. While, inside, something reorganized itself without consulting me. It wasn't fair. A contraction came and went. I breathed through it. I didn't curse. I didn't cry. I felt the tightness turn into resistance, as if something inside me were saying enough. I picked up my phone again and scrolled without focus. Old messages, banal conversations, plans for the coming weeks, trips, projects, dates that now felt presumptuous. I realized how much I had planned as if there were guarantees, as if life would follow my schedule. None of that felt true anymore. Nothing felt under control, and that only fed the anger. I looked at my reflection in the living room mirror and didn't look away. There was firmness there, exhaustion too, but above all, a quiet refusal. I wouldn't stay in the dark much longer. I sat down again, breathing harder. The pain came in waves. I was starting to recognize them. To wait. To get through. That irritated me. That awareness brought more anger. For learning something I never wanted to learn. For being trained by force to endure. For not choosing this process. For it choosing me. I stood up again. Picked up my coat from the back of the chair. Placed it on the table, like a warning to myself. There, in the silence of the apartment, I made a quiet decision. I wouldn't keep pretending this was normal. I wouldn't push it off anymore. Not out of courage. Out of exhaustion, the anger didn't shout. It settled in. And for the first time, it set me in motion. I got dressed again, careful not to move too fast. I needed to feel in control. If I didn't move, maybe nothing would change. Maybe everything could still go back to normal. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. My face looked pale, tired. I forced myself to smile. It didn't feel like mine. I didn't feel like me anymore. I grabbed my phone, but I didn't know who to call. There was no one to ask for help from. The thought of it made my stomach turn. I couldn't show them I was weak. I couldn't let anyone see how close I was to falling apart. Not yet. The pain surged again, this time sharper. I didn't want to react. I didn't want to let it win, but it was impossible to ignore. I gasped, squeezing my eyes shut. How could I have ignored this? How could I have missed everything? I could feel my body betraying me, piece by piece. The dull ache in my abdomen, the strange heaviness, the feeling that something inside was shifting, moving. I breathed deeply, but it didn't help. Nothing helped. I thought about lying down, resting, waiting for the pain to go away. But I knew that wasn't going to fix it. Nothing would fix it. The truth was, I had been running from it for so long. I grabbed my phone again. I scrolled aimlessly, avoiding reality, avoiding the obvious. I could feel my heart race as I reached out to type a message. But what would I say? What could I say? I wasn't even sure what was happening to me. I had no answers, only fragments of confusion. I could feel something building inside me, something bigger than I had ever imagined. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, a cold, sinking feeling. When the next wave of pain hit, I didn't try to fight it. I let it crash over me, overwhelming me. It was too much. Everything was too much. I fell to my knees, clutching the edge of the bed. This wasn't just a scare. This was real. And no matter how much I tried to deny it, it was happening. Right now. Right here. I thought about calling someone, but the words didn't come. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I was ready to admit it. The realization hit me hard. I was completely alone in this. No one could fix it. No one could make it go away. The truth was here and it was ugly, and I wasn't ready for it. But I had to face it. I had no choice. I got out of bed before the pain could decide for me. It wasn't bravery. It was fear of staying still. I put my coat on again, now in improvised armor. I took a deep breath in front of the mirror. The face staring back at me looked older than yesterday. I picked up my phone carefully, as if it might bite. I opened the front camera without a clear reason, just to see, just to confirm I was still there. The image shook slightly. I turned it off quickly, embarrassed by the impulse. I organized my bag with mechanical movements, keys, wallet, ID, nothing extraordinary. The ordinary calmed me, proof that I could still act. I thought about asking for help, writing a short message, deleting it, rewriting, deleting again. I didn't want to worry anyone without certainty. My courage still needed justification. The pain returned in predictable waves. I recognized them now. Waited. Moved through them. When they passed, I felt strangely capable, as if I had learned something by force, something I never wanted to learn. I sat on the edge of the bed and made a mental list. What to say, what to hide, what to admit. The most controlled version of the truth, the one that wouldn't cause panic, the one that still let me choose. My phone vibrated, a random notification. I ignored it. Then another one. The world kept asking for attention while my body demanded priority. That conflict irritated me and pushed me forward. I opened the messaging app and wrote something simple. I didn't explain too much. I didn't dramatize. I just asked for company. Before I could think better, I sent it. My heart raced at the gesture. Fragile courage is also this, acting before giving up. While I waited for a reply, I fixed my hair in the dark reflection of the window. An automatic gesture, an attempt to look normal, to look presentable, as if someone were watching, as if it mattered. The pain came again, stronger. I held my breath. Let it go slowly. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I endured, and that scared me. I realized I was changing how I moved through things. Observing, mentally recording, as if every sensation would need to be remembered later, not to relive, but to understand. The reply arrived, just one word. I'm coming. Relief came mixed with guilt. I wasn't alone anymore. And that meant I couldn't pretend. I put the bag over my shoulder. It felt heavier than it should have. I turned off the bedroom lights, sat in the dark for a few seconds, alert, as prepared as I could be. The courage wasn't steady, but it kept me moving. The doorbell rang before I was ready. A short sound, decisive. My body reacted before my mind. I straightened my posture, as if that could hide something. I opened the door carefully. Lisa walked in, bringing the cold night with her. Her eyes scanned me too quickly, lingered where they shouldn't have. "You're not okay," she said. It wasn't a question. I tried to smile, failed. She dropped her bag on the floor and stepped closer. Her hand on my arm was firm, real, not a party touch, the touch of someone who notices cracks. "How long have you been like this?" I shook my head. "It's just pain." The word sounded small, inadequate. She didn't believe me. Another wave came without warning, stronger, longer. I closed my eyes on instinct. The air left my lungs in a sound I didn't recognize as mine. When I opened my eyes, Lisa was kneeling in front of me. This isn't normal. I knew that, but hearing it from someone else made it official. The facade started to give way right there, not loudly, through shame. I sat on the couch, hands shaking in my lap. Lisa was talking, but I heard her from far away. Hospital. Call someone. Car. Words that weighed on my body before becoming decisions. My phone vibrated on the table. A message from Jake. Another notification. Then another. The world was starting to notice my absence, and that exposed me. "Did you tell anyone?" I shook my head. The idea of explaining exhausted me. I didn't understand enough to narrate it. How do you explain something you can't even name? The pain eased for a few seconds, just long enough for doubt to try to return. Maybe I was exaggerating. Maybe I could wait. Lisa watched me in silence, like someone who had already decided, "You're not going through this alone." The sentence wasn't comforting. It was final. It took away the control I was still pretending to have. I stood up to get water and didn't make it to the sink. My body folded. My breathing lost rhythm. Lisa held my shoulder, firm, visible. "Okay," I said. It wasn't agreement. It was surrender. The facade fell there, not in front of a crowd, but in front of someone who saw too much. While she grabbed the keys, something shifted, not the pain. My place in the story. I was no longer the woman controlling her own narrative. Others were entering it. I picked up my phone to say I was leaving, deleted the message, then another. I didn't know what to say without revealing too much. Every word felt like exposure. Lisa opened the door and waited. The hallway felt longer than before. Distant fireworks echoed, cold lights, heavy silence. Every step stripped away another piece of the image I had held. When the door closed behind me, I understood. The loss wasn't just the social facade. It was the illusion of privacy. Whatever was happening, it no longer fit inside me alone. The birth didn't begin as a miracle. It began as loss. When the last contraction ended, something inside me went quiet. It wasn't relief. It was emptiness. A strange space where I used to exist whole. The voices around me kept going. "Congratulations. Breathe. You're doing great." I nodded without understanding. My body was there, but I wasn't. They placed the baby on my chest, warm, heavy, too real. I looked without recognizing. It was a human being, and I didn't know who I was next to it. I waited to feel something. That instant love, the promised connection. Nothing came, only confusion. My first instinct wasn't to hold him. It was to give him back, as if someone had handed me the wrong thing, as if this couldn't possibly be mine. Guilt arrived fast, violent, for not feeling what I was supposed to feel, for thinking about escape when there was nowhere to go, for wanting to close my eyes and return to before. My body hurt in places I couldn't name, burned, throbbed, bled, but the deepest pain wasn't physical. It was realizing that the woman who entered that room would never leave it. She died there, between pushes, broken breathing, screams I don't remember making. They took the baby away to measure, clean, examine. I felt relief when he left my chest, and shame for feeling it. I was alone for a few minutes. The room felt too big, too white. I tried to organize my thoughts. I couldn't. When they brought the baby back, I accepted him because I had no choice. I held him like something too fragile to drop, not like a mother, like a survivor. He moved. made noise, demanded presence, and all I wanted was silence. My chest started to hurt, not from emotion, from function. My body was producing milk without asking me. It kept working while my mind tried to understand what had happened. So this was it. There was no choice, no pause, no manual. I hadn't been reborn. I had been dismantled. I looked at my hands. They were still mine. But everything about them felt different. Heavy, responsible, irreversible. In that moment, I understood. Motherhood doesn't begin with love. It begins with grief. Grief for who I was. For the body that belonged only to me. For the life that ended without warning. And while everyone celebrated a birth, I cried in silence for the woman who had just died. The days that followed didn't obey any order. They turned into blurred blocks of time, dim light, endless nights, a body awake while the mind begged for rest. I didn't want visitors. No questions, no advice. The mere idea of people nearby caused physical irritation, as if any presence could touch something that was still too exposed. The baby slept little, woke up without warning, cried as if the world had ended every time. And somehow, all of that was my responsibility. Beyond the exhaustion, there was fear, a constant, silent fear. What if I had harmed him? What if some choice I made had left invisible marks? The nights brought those thoughts with more force. The parties, the drinks, the careless late nights. I didn't know I was pregnant. But guilt doesn't care about explanations. I watched every breath he took, every tiny movement, as if I were always waiting for a delayed consequence. Breastfeeding attempts were a quiet disaster. The latch never seemed right. My chest burned even before he touched it. When the time came, I wanted to cry. Not from emotion, from anticipating the pain. There were days I cried before he even woke up, just imagining the next cycle, pain, sleep deprivation, accumulated guilt. I didn't feel like a mother. I felt responsible for something I still didn't fully understand, as if I were always about to fail. Love didn't come like an avalanche. It came in almost invisible fragments. A second of silence after the crying. The weight of him asleep on my arm. The sound of his breathing brushing against mine. And even in those moments, there was strangeness. As if I were caring for someone I didn't yet know. As if the bond were being built under surveillance. I avoided mirrors, avoided photos, avoided thinking about the body I no longer recognized. The marks, the swelling, the exhausted face that didn't match the image of a happy mother. One day, almost on impulse, I opened Instagram. Not to show myself, not to truly post. I recorded a short video in my stories. No filter, no rehearsal. I showed only a tiny hand closing in the air, a little foot curled against the blanket, the small body from behind, breathing. My face appeared for a few seconds, tired, swollen, real. It was easier to show it that way. Protect what was his, expose only what was mine. I sent it only to those who were already there, distant family, a few close friends. The responses came quickly, long messages, unexpected confessions, women saying I felt that fear too. I blamed myself too. I didn't recognize myself at first either. It didn't solve anything, but it eased the weight a little. I started recording from time to time. Never planned, never polished, only when I needed to get something out of me. The camera became a safe distance, protection, a bridge. I still felt fear, still felt guilt, still wanted to run sometimes. But I began to accept one thing. I didn't need to love everything to continue. I didn't need to be ready to exist. Motherhood didn't ask me for perfection, only imperfect presence. And for the first time since the birth, that felt possible. Nothing changed all at once. There was no clear turning point, no specific day I could point to as the beginning. What happened was accumulation, similar days, long nights, the baby growing millimeters each day, and me changing without noticing. I still felt fear. I still felt guilt. But something new began to take up space between those emotions, a strange urge to organize the chaos, to give a name to what had happened to me. The messages kept coming. Not many, but constant. Women who weren't asking for advice. They were asking for recognition. I replied when I could, sometimes with a short voice note, sometimes with respectful silence. I realized it wasn't the answer that mattered. It was the mirror. I started recording with more intention, still without showing the baby, never the face, never the whole body. A tiny hand holding my finger, a little foot resting against my arm. The small body from behind, breathing in the dark. My face appeared. No makeup, no script. With deep, dark circles and a low voice, I talked about the body, about fear, about the guilt that doesn't disappear just because the baby was born healthy, about the shock of losing who I was without warning. I didn't speak as an expert. I spoke as someone trying to understand while still crossing through it. One morning, I woke up to notifications I didn't recognize, names I had never seen before, messages too long to be just curiosity. Someone had saved a video. Someone had shared it outside my circle. Screenshots started arriving. Links, replies to replies. It was no longer a conversation among tired women. It was something spreading without asking my permission. I felt fear, not pride. Fear of having exposed too much. Fear of losing control over what people would do with it. Fear of the world touching something that was still fragile. I thought about deleting everything, closing the account, returning to silence. But the messages kept coming. Women saying that video was the first time they didn't feel wrong, or cold, or broken. I hadn't gone viral. I had been recognized. Over time, I understood. My story wasn't just mine. The invisible pregnancy, the Christmas birth, the silent guilt, the death of the woman I was. All of that existed in other bodies, in other homes, in other silences. The baby grew, stronger, more present, and slowly, so did I. I didn't become someone else, but I stopped trying to go back to who I was. Rebirth wasn't beautiful, it was functional, it was honest. I survived. I created boundaries. I chose what to show and what to protect. I found a voice where there had once been confusion, not to teach, not to sell, but to exist out loud. If someone would call that being an influencer, I didn't know. For me, it was just this, a woman who died one Christmas and chose not to disappear with her. After everything, there was no final answer, no sentence capable of putting order into what happened. What remained was continuation, days that came even when I wasn't ready, a body that had to keep functioning, a mind trying to catch up with something that had already changed everything. I didn't become better, or stronger, or wiser. I became different. Some transformations don't ask for permission. They move through you, taking away what no longer fits. The woman I was died that Christmas, and no one observed a minute of silence for her. The world kept celebrating while something inside me ended. What was born after wasn't an ideal version. It was a possible one. A woman who learned to choose what to show, what to protect, what to say out loud, and what to keep to herself. None of this was beautiful, but it was real. And maybe that's what remains. Not the perfect story, not an inspiring ending, but permission. Permission to feel emptiness before love, to feel fear alongside responsibility, to not recognize your own life for a while. If you stayed until the end, maybe it wasn't curiosity, maybe it was recognition, and that already says a lot. 9 invisible months, a Christmas birth, a woman who ceased to exist. Mothers, did the emptiness come before the love? Tell me in the comments. Non-mothers, did this shock you? A like tells me. If you want real stories without filters, stay with me.